Here is my official Patreon. Please join it because there are many stuffs that I can't share here because of community guidelines. But on my Patreon page, you will get adult Harry stories, Naruto, and Deca 2. Also the quick access for other parts of my story which might take time on YouTube. Also there are many stuffs you will get here. Please consider joining my Patreon. Link in the description.
Hey, in this video we are gonna see, what if Supreme Naruto stops Order 66? This is part 1 and I request to check out respective author of this fanfic named Hope is Still Alive by Razorback Mike. Let's get in the video. A blonde-haired man watched the company of clones move through the dense jungle. He had no emotion in his open right eye. His left was closed with a scar going over it. He knew what Palpatine had planned and he honestly didn't care. He had given up on peace all those years ago when he went through war after war. He didn't care who won, he just picked a side and fought to the bitter end. This was the only war he hadn't been involved in. At least not directly. Several clients had hired him for assassination missions and the works. He found his gaze lingering on the blue-skinned woman. She was beautiful, had a shapely body, he pushed these thoughts away. For over 5,000 years he had not been able to die. He couldn't have a family without them dying while he watched on, forever young. Besides, his world had been destroyed long ago. For the longest time he felt dead but couldn't die. He turned and walked into the jungle. He started to get the same feeling in his gut whenever he was going to get dragged into something. Ayla Sakura walked out of the tent and stretched her aching muscles, failing to suppress a groan as she felt her joints pop. She had been stuck in that communications tent for the past 2 hours being debriefed by Masters Yoda and Windu. To be debriefed by the two of the highest-ranking masters of the Jedi Order was an intimidating endeavor, and not something she would like to be in again anytime soon. Felucia was a burning death trap. The temperature during the day was staggering at between 60 to 80 degrees, except during the night cycle or heavy storms, where it was known to fall to -10. Ayla's choice of attire was just right for this environment. At the moment she had chosen to wear a pair of skin-tight leather pants, a cut leather vest which left her arms and stomach bare and a pair of knee-high black boots. Even with this attire it was still hot, and she was usually covered in sweat from her exertions before the day was out. She certainly didn't envy her clone troopers, boiling away inside those armored suits. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and opened them to see the stream of activity taking place around her. The base was being taken down and packed up. Her army was on the move. Clone troopers were loading themselves inside all-terrain open transports, ATOTs, and the four-legged all-terrain tactical enforcers, or ATEs. All in all they were on schedule, and the 327th Star Corps would be ready to advance within the hour. The division's clone commander, Bly, told her the entire corps respected her for getting them out of several tight spots. After their first tour together, Ayla was hoping for the division to return to Coruscant after the Battle of Seleucami for leave, but was denied and given a new mission. Originally the mission was to capture high-ranking separatist leader Shu Mai. But that had quickly changed just a few days after they arrived on planet. They had saved a fellow Jedi Knight, Barriss Offee, who had reported that not only had Shu Mai left the planet, but she had planned to poison Felucia's water supply. Ayla reported this to the High Council, where she was ordered to remain and stop this crisis. "Ma'am," she turned to see her friend and confidant standing to attention right behind her. Bly was her clone commander, the second in command of the 327th. He had watched her back since she was assigned as their superior, and the two had become close friends over the years they spent together. Bly was fully garbed in his field armor, the once pristine white with yellow trim now chipped and scorched from combat. "The division is ready to move out. All we are waiting for is your order." She nodded her head. "Very well, Commander. Tell the division they may advance." "Yes, General," the commander replied, before leaning in a little. "Are you all right? Old Scruffs didn't give you a hard time, did they?" She smirked at his statement. Bly had become quite protective of her over the years, Heck, half the Corps had become overprotecting of her. Nothing I couldn't take care of. They just want to know when we'll be finished mopping up. She sighed before changing the subject. Has Barris moved out yet? About 10 minutes ago, General, Bly replied. Don't worry, she's in good hands. Of course she's in good hands, gal's with her. Ayla replied with a pout, turning around to survey the thick alien jungle before her. It happened suddenly. Her mind was assaulted by a mass of memories and emotions that were not hers. So many that it was impossible to filter them out, they were completely incoherent. Hands blurred up to hold onto her forehead. She let out a gasp, and then a startled cry as the psychic backlash continued its assault. A few images became clear. An entire continent plunged into war. A madman trying to conquer all. Several cities in ruins, buildings burning and streets littered with corpses. Battlefields covered with blood and strange white monsters. Shadowy figures wearing black cloaks with red clouds. A single blonde-haired man in a black trench coat, with some sort of headband that was slashed through. Ayla awoke with a start, feeling a set of hands grip her shoulders and shake her. Slowly she opened her eyes to be met with Bly's worried face. His mouth moved, but she could not hear the words. General, damn it, Ayla. Can you hear me? Yes, she replied, voice a croak. Yes, Bly, I can hear you. Are you all right? The commander asked, face set in a worried frown as he helped her into a sitting position. Had she blacked out? She didn't know, but judging by her commander's reaction she must have. I don't know, Ayla replied with a frown, right hand absently massaging her temple in a vain attempt to rid her of the lingering pain. I think I had a vision, but it was strong, stronger than anything I've ever had before. The commander nodded. Should I call a medic? No. Ayla replied, accepting his extended hand to help her get back to her feet. It's nothing, I'll be fine. She turned, ignoring Bly's worried glance to look over the alien Felucian forest. Mushroom-shaped trees reaching up to the skyline, barren landscape occasionally broken by the shoots of smaller vegetation she did not recognize. Something in those woods was calling to her. She didn't know what, just that she felt some kind of pull coming from there. Like the force was guiding her. Bly, can you take command for a moment? She asked, knowing the answer before it left his mouth. Of course. Bly replied in an unsure voice. Then lead them to the rendezvous point. She ordered lightly, offering him a reassuring smile to try and negate his fears. It didn't work. I don't think I should leave you alone after such a I don't know what it was. He said in a concerned tone of voice. She waved him off, I'm fine now, Bly, but something in this forest is calling out to me, and I don't think I'll get any rest until I find out what. Bly studied her for a moment before sighing in defeat. The rest of them will have his balls on a hook for this. Can I at least convince you to take a squad of ARC troopers along? She gave him a cheeky grin. They'll only slow me down. But if it puts your mind at rest, then all right. She started walking towards the dense jungle. Bly nodded and put his helmet back on. Alpha Team, escort the general until the rendezvous point. We'll meet you there. A group of 4 ARC troopers all saluted and moved to follow their general. Jungles of Felucia. Bly had been leading the company to the rendezvous for about 10 minutes when his communicator went off. It was a secured channel that could only be accessed by the Chancellor himself. A blue hologram appeared and said words that made him lose all faith. Execute Order 66. Before it had ended, he was already running towards Ayla. He shouted for one of his captains to take charge and carry on. Ayla was only about 20 yards ahead of the ARC squad when the sergeant received the order. He discreetly signaled the other 3 and told them the order. As they prepared their weapons, they walked closer to her. Something she noticed. I'm sorry, General. It's been an honor serving with you. Ayla's eyes widened and she tried to reach for her lightsaber, but the clones already had their weapons aimed at her. She squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the end. She heard blasts going off and several screams. She hesitantly opened her eyes and saw all 4 clones dead and the mysterious man from her vision in front of her. Bly had burst through the canopy with his blaster ready to fire. He kept it raised at the stranger when he saw the dead bodies. He was wearing black cargo pants that were tucked into black, steel-toed combat boots. He had on a skin-tight, sleeveless black shirt/mask combo. A black trench coat that had a high collar topped the look. Its sleeves looked as if they had been ripped off and the bottom looked tattered as well. He also was wearing thin, black sunglasses that covered his eyes. The left one had a scar going over it. He had a weird tattoo of a kitsune on his right arm. It looked like a demonic fox ready to strike with tribal markings all around it. He also had a headband with a slash on it as well that was located on his right shoulder. His hair was pulled into a small ponytail that stopped about mid-shoulder. But what drew her attention most was the 6-foot-long blade leaning on his shoulder. It was bandaged with blood seeping through it. The bottom of the hilt was decorated with a skull. "General, we have to get you out of here. The others are going to start Order 66. Bly said in a rushed tone full of worry. His blaster was still pointed at the blonde. Ayla looked startled at what he said. "Wait, what is Order 66? We weren't briefed on it." The blonde-haired man finally spoke in an bored tone. "He means that when the Chancellor gives that order, then all Jedi are to be eliminated. It's to only be used when the Chancellor has had an attempted assassination on his life via the Jedi. And could you stop pointing that shit at me? I saved her from your men. Now I'm gonna leave this godforsaken rock. You two can come if you want, but you're welcome to try your chances with an army of clones." Ayla widened her eyes as the strange man spoke. Bly looked at her for the confirmation to lower his weapon, and when she nodded her head he did just that. Ayla looked at the man, still shocked out of her mind and horrified at the possibilities. "I can't go. I need to recuse Barriss before they get to her." "Come on, Bly." Before she could leave though, the stranger stopped them. "She's already dead. I felt her life fade right before your men turned on you." Ayla stopped in her tracks. She was faced away from both men so they couldn't see her tears. Bly turned to the blonde and spoke hesitantly. "What do you mean by, felt her life fade?" Ayla turned as she was curious as well. Her tears were gone and the only sign that she had cried was her bloodshot eyes. "I'll explain it later. If we don't leave right now they are going to send reinforcements. My ship is not far from here." He turned and walked in the direction of his ship. Bly looked at his superior for orders. Ayla sighed before walking after him. "It's not like we have anywhere else to go." Bly nodded his head sadly to the grim statement. "Would it be too much trouble to know the name of the man who saved me?" Ayla asked the blonde, who only faltered for a second. "Naruto," was all he said before continuing. After a 10-minute walk they arrived at his ship. It was a YT 1300 freighter. It was a dull gray color with some white. In faded letters they saw its name, "Forward onto Dawn." The ship itself looked menacing. It had so many weapons and cannons poking out of it. When they were inside, both Bly and Ayla were impressed by the hardware on the ship. All of its systems were very advanced and as state-of-the-art as they get. Its engines were definitely not legal. It had heavy-duty shields and life support systems. The damn thing even had 2 ball turrets and 16 torpedo tubes. 2 rear turrets guarded the backside. 3 cannons were positioned on both sides as well. All in all, it was armed to the teeth. As they followed Naruto to the control room, they noticed that almost every room stored some kind of weapon. Bly was starting to drool at the prospect of so much gear, while Ayla was curious to why he would need all of those weapons. Naruto sat in the pilot's chair and started to lift her off the ground. Ayla and Bly didn't relax until they had entered hyperspace. Naruto set the ship on autopilot while he walked past them towards the armory/storage bay. There are 2 rooms down the hall you can use. The cafeteria is just past that. I don't mind if you restock your weapons and ammo because where we're headed, you're gonna need it. It will take a few days to get there though. He continued down the hall and disappeared. Bly sighed and walked towards the cafeteria. This is gonna be a long trip. Ayla nodded her head and followed him. She wanted to question Naruto more on his abilities, but he said the trip would take a little while and they had time. So she decided to eat first. Bly and Ayla were surprised when they arrived in the cafeteria. It had enough room for around 30 people. The ship looked big, but they didn't know it could hold that many people. As they sat down to eat the meals the droids made, they enjoyed the silence. That was until a blue blur flew right past them and crashed into the kitchen. Bly grabbed his blaster and Ayla drew her lightsaber. They cautiously approached the room as more crashing sounds emanated from it. Ayla nodded to Bly and they charged into the room. A blue thing, with what looked like scales all over it, was feasting on the food. It stopped and looked at them as they did the same. An uncomfortable silence settled over the room. Then the thing grinned at them with razor-sharp teeth. "It seems you have met Samahata." The calm voice shook them from their stupor. They saw Naruto leaning on the doorway gazing at the now identified Samahata. The big blue thing then gurgled something at Naruto, who just jerked his head lightly towards the droids preparing food. It took off again after the food. Naruto turned to them and spoke in his usual monotone voice. "It's impolite to stare." Bly looked at Samahata while Ayla blushed slightly and looked at the floor. "Why do I feel this way? Is it him that is making me feel like I am?" Ayla thought in utter confusion. Naruto only raised an eyebrow at the blush and turned to watch Samahata as he spoke again. Samahata is a sentient sword. It chooses its own master. The name translates roughly to shark skin blade in basic. Ayla's eyes widened when she heard that the sword was sentient. Bly just looked confused. "Now hold up. What do you mean, sentient? I might not be the brightest crayon in the box, but that shouldn't be possible." Ayla nodded her head uncertainly. This had never happened before, well, at least not according to the Jedi archives. Naruto continued to stare at the monstrous blade for a few seconds and then he answered the question. "It's an ancient sword, over 5,000 years old. It was said to have been made from a turtle demon's hide. The sword itself is alive. Many who have tried to take it as their own were eaten by Samahata because they weren't worthy." Bly looked slightly disgusted at the last part while Ayla outright frowned at the sword's bloody past. Ayla pushed those thoughts from her mind and decided now was as good a time as any to ask him about his abilities. She still wondered how he was able to sense Barris's death. "So now that we are in a safer location, are you going to explain to us about your powers?" Bly tore his gaze from the blade and focused on Naruto. Naruto felt both of their eyes on him and he sighed. He was starting to miss when it was just him and Samahata. Scratch that. The damn sword was annoying. People from my planet have the ability to harness an energy source called chakra. Chakra is the base of all life in the universe. It is a combination of physical and spiritual energies. Those who have trained to sense it can feel the life forces around them. Ayla and Bly were confused when he said this. But they held their questions until he was finished. "We used chakra to manipulate the elements to use them in battle. We were able to create blades of wind and dragons from water and fire. We could move the earth itself." Bly noticed how he kept using past tense and was only more confused. Had something happened? He had never heard of a people who could do such things, so something had to have happened. Ayla came to a similar conclusion, but she voiced her questions. "What do you mean could? I've never heard of a species able to perform such feats." Either you're lying or something happened. Which is it? Naruto was silent for what seemed like forever. Then he turned and started to leave the room. He spoke one last time before he left. War. This caught both Bly and Ayla off guard. A war that wiped out an entire planet? It had happened before, but only in the earliest years of the Republic. Bly felt he was pushing too much. The way Naruto walked and talked. It was similar to that of an old veteran. Ayla however wasn't satisfied and followed him to the bridge. Bly sighed and sat down to finish his meal, but before he could he heard a whine. Bly looked up and saw Samahata with a pout, begging for more food. It was really disturbing, especially with its teeth. He put on a stern face and prepared for the worst. No, bad sword. Bridge, forward onto dawn. Naruto was sitting in the captain's seat. He didn't know why, but he felt the need to trust the beautiful Twi'lek. He couldn't be falling for her. He had just met her and he would only be hurting himself in the long run. His peace was disturbed when said woman walked in. She had a stern look on her face with her arms crossed. He raised an eyebrow at this. It felt like he was a child being reprimanded. Tell me the whole story of how your people were destroyed. I've never heard of any people able to do what you said. Naruto was starting to get annoyed. He wanted to tell her but his heart had been hurt too many times for it just to be that easy. Why do you care? This isn't any of your business. Ayla was angered by this, and all of the pent-up feelings she had been building were let out. First she felt the massive blow in the force from all of the death, then she was being drawn to him for some reason. And he had the gall to say what he did. Why do I care? I don't know honestly. For some reason the force is pulling me towards you and I've never had these feelings. It's so confusing and then. Oh force, all of the death. I felt each of them become one with it. Then she turned into a blubbering mess. Tears streamed down her face and her words were jumbled as Naruto sat there shocked. Bly was outside the doorway, unseen, with a grim face. Before she knew it, Ayla was enveloped by some warmth. When she opened her eyes she saw Naruto hugging her, not saying a word, but he was comforting her. Something that had become foreign to him. She felt right, like this was the way things were supposed to be. She just stopped thinking and started to cry into his chest, getting his coat wet with her tears. Bly gave a small smile outside and started to walk back to the cafeteria when his path was blocked by Samahata with the same disturbing pout. He shivered and just gave up. The damn thing was too much trouble to deal with right now. Fine, let's go get some food. Be quiet though. If it hurt him, Samahata didn't give any recognition as it bolted towards the cafeteria. Naruto didn't know why he did it. Hugging her just felt right to him. For the first time in years, he felt happy, content. He was at some form of peace. Then a dark voice from the past crept up. You know, Kit, I could make it so you could stay with her. Naruto's right eye widened then narrowed. What do you mean, Kurama? He asked back in his mind. He never let go of Ayla because it would alert her. I mean, if you mark her as your mate then she would only die when you die. And if she died then you would die. Just think about it. And the demonic fox retreated back into the depths of his mind. Naruto was shocked out of his mind. He was really angry at the bastard for not telling him sooner, but he could talk to him later. Right now he just wanted to enjoy this moment. Ayla felt her heart skip a beat when he first made contact with her. She knew what the feelings meant. She was falling for him. He saved her then comforted her in her time of need. She felt at conflict with the Jedi Code, but the feelings made her feel at peace with the galaxy. When she had stopped crying she still held on to him as if he were the pillar holding up her world. Naruto spoke in a soft tone with warmth in it. You wanted to hear the story of my people? Well, listen good because it's a long and sad story. Ayla blushed so much her face was turning bright red when he picked her up and sat down in his seat with her in his lap. Her arms were around his neck as she snuggled into his chest. Naruto was slightly uncomfortable with this, but that came with ignoring your emotions for years. It all started on the day I was born. Hours later, Ayla was shocked. No, shocked wasn't the right word. More like overloaded. Bly wasn't faring much better as he was back outside leaning on a wall as he listened to the story. Naruto was 5,000 years old. A demon sealed inside of him kept him from dying. His world was destroyed by cataclysmic war after war. He was the last of his people left in all of the wide galaxy. His left eye was something called the Sharingan, which was given to him by a dying teacher. He could manipulate the elements to his command. Not to mention that he had several swords that could hold up against a lightsaber. Ayla could tell it was no lie. The haunted look in his eye told her that much. And he had shown her his Sharingan. Naruto sighed before lifting her as he walked towards the room he had given her. Bly started to freak out and struggled to make it to his room before they reached him. Naruto walked into Ayla's room and laid her down and started to walk out. She whimpered a little. "Please, could you stay with me tonight?" she asked in a whimper after he had set her onto her bed. Naruto raised an eyebrow and Ayla blushed. "Not like that, you ass. I just don't want to be alone tonight." Naruto nodded and took off his coat and his boots. Ayla blushed slightly when she saw his muscled form, but what took the cake was when his mask came off. He had an angular face with no scars, but he had these strange whisker marks. He laid down next to her. Before he could roll over and face the other way, she clung to him and buried her face in his chest. Her leku were curled in content. It took Naruto quite a while to get comfortable. The next morning, Ayala woke feeling better than she had the day before. She hugged her warm pillow tighter until she heard a small groan. Her eyes snapped open as she saw Naruto gazing at the ceiling. He grunted and spoke in a gruff voice. "You squeeze in your sleep." She blushed and tightened her hold again. This resulted in another grunt and she smirked before laying her head back on his chest. "Pillows don't talk." Naruto had a small smile as he hesitantly hugged her back. Someone cleared their throat, snapping the two out of their relaxation. Ayla blushed like crazy while Naruto looked mildly annoyed. Bly had a smirk on his face as he leaned against the door frame. Bly had foregone his clone trooper uniform and armor. Now he had on a black armor-plated chest with camo fatigues on underneath that. He also had on several armor paddings around his joints and black boots on. Naruto lazily raised an eyebrow at that. Bly snorted at the look he was getting. "You said help yourself and I did. I can't go around in my old uniform anyway. The monitor said we'll be reaching wherever we're headed in about 3 hours." Both looked at Naruto expectantly as he got back into full gear. Ayla was already dressed so she didn't need to change since she didn't have any spare clothes. When they reached the bridge, Ayla had had enough. "Well, are you going to tell us where we're going?" Naruto looked up from the controls and spoke with a small smirk on his face. "All you had to do was ask." Bly's eye was twitching and Ayla muttered ass. Naruto smirked for a little longer before getting serious. "There is a safe haven for some of your younglings on one of Mandalore's moons. We're going to get them before the Empire does." Bly nodded and went to the armory to check out some more weapons he wanted to try out. Ayla stood there while Naruto spoke again. "You want to know how I know this?" She nodded and looked expectant. Naruto, however, didn't miss a beat. "I happen to have a very good spy network. That's how I knew about Order 66 and this particular safe haven." Ayla gave in to his logic. "Being around as long as he has been, well, you tend to pick a few things up. I figured you might want to make sure they were all right before we moved on." She gave a small smile at his thoughtfulness. Ayla had a small blush as an idea came to her head. Before he knew what was happening, Ayla had given him a peck on the cheek and ran out of the room. Naruto couldn't but let out a smile at that. Things were looking up for him. Finally, Jedi Master Shak Ti Nad, her Jedi Padawan Maris brood had escaped the purge that was Order 66 and had been watching over 22 younglings since it had happened. Shak Ti herself was a Togruta and Maris was a female Zebrek. They were on one of Mandalore's moons, which was never used or visited very often. All they could hope for was a miracle. So when a ship started to descend towards them that was armed to the teeth, well, they were very cautious. Shak Ti turned to her Padawan and started to give orders. Maris, take the younglings inside. If something happens, then run. I'll hold them for as long as I can. Maris looked ready to object to her master's order, but the look she was giving her left her with no choice. As she went inside the cave, Shak Ti ignited her green lightsaber and prepared for the worst. As the ship landed, the hatch opened, and when it had fully descended, a female figure was walking down the ramp. Her eyes widened when she saw who it was. Ayla bowed to her and spoke in a happy tone. Master T, it is good to see you. I was rescued on Felucia and my rescuer told me of this place. I had hoped we would find you before the Empire. What do you mean, your rescuer? Shak Ti asked in a cautious tone. Ayla spoke quickly as to relieve her of doubt. He saved my life from the clones that almost killed me. He is still on the ship, but we have enough food and provisions for as many as you may have. Shak Ti wasn't totally trustful, but if Ayla trusted him, then she really didn't have a choice. Maris, bring the younglings. We're leaving. Maris was shocked but didn't question her master and started to herd the children into the spaceship. When they were on board, Shak Ti turned to Ayla and spoke in a neutral voice. So who is the one who rescued you? That would be me. A voice said behind her. When they were on board, Shak Ti turned to Ayla and spoke in a neutral voice. So who is the one who rescued you? That would be me. A voice said behind her. Shak Ti turned to locate the source of the voice. It was Naruto in full gear, which did nothing to ease her nervousness. His scar going vertically down his left eye was drawing the attention of some of the younglings. Their hushed whispers and stares were poorly hidden. Ayla suppressed a giggle when she Naruto's eye start to twitch. Shak Ti raised a delicate eyebrow, wondering what the outcome would be. Naruto crouched down to become eye level with most of the younglings and proceeded to stare back at them. Shak Ti's sweat dropped along with her Padawan. Then a scream broke them all from their trances. Bly had struggled down the hall fighting with Samahata over a steak. Oh no, you don't, you scaly bastard. This is my steak. And the fight continued. It was hard to tell which the children were more afraid of. Shak Ti and Maris ignited their lightsabers and were about to decapitate the poor former clone commander. Ayla had to jump in their paths to stop them. Wait. He's with us. And so is that sword, unfortunately. She added in a semi-bitter undertone. Naruto twitched and tore his gaze from the disturbing scene. Now I don't think you're giving Samahata a fair trial here. It saved your life. Shak Ti and Maris just continued to get more and more confused. Shak Ti exercised all the patience and control she had gained from her years in the Jedi Order to deal with the situation. Quiet. She yelled. The younglings had stopped screaming, Bly and Samahata stopped fighting, Naruto and Ayla froze in place. One of the children leaned over to his friend and whispered even though everyone could hear him. Master T is scary when she gets mad. Ayla almost burst out laughing right there while Naruto raised an eyebrow. Maris looked conflicted over how to react, she was her master after all. She took a deep breath and looked at Ayla. Start from the beginning. And what is that? Thing, and why is it fighting a clone? Naruto just turned and walked to the bridge. When Ayla tried to stop him, he just spoke as he continued down the hall. You can do this, you're a big girl. Besides, I believe in a sink or swim policy. If you can't explain it right, then send M to me. There are rooms, but you're going to have to share. If you are hungry, there are droids in the cafeteria. Oh, and don't feed the sword, please, that's the result. As he gestured towards Bly and Samahata. Bly spoke up one last time before Naruto was out of earshot. And where exactly are we going now? Naruto stopped at the door leading to the bridge. My home. And he went inside to enter the hyperspace coordinates. Shock T looked at a nervous Ayla with an annoyed expression. Explain. Ayla just groaned while Bly laughed at her. She rounded on him quickly to retaliate. Oh, shut up, you big baby. Just give the damn sword the steak. Hey, this is about principle and honor. Shock Ti's patience was wearing thin really quickly. Maris turned to the younglings and spoke in a nervous tone. Cover your ears, this may get a little, carried away. Bridge, forward onto Dawn. Naruto wasn't all that torn up about going back to his home planet. No, it was going back to his village that was the problem. It would be the perfect place to hide considering that no one but him knew where it was. But going back meant he would have to be reminded of all of the painful memories that haunted him to this day. He had to watch as his friends slowly died while he lived on, eternally young. He left the village as soon as he could, and he left the planet soon after. A stray merchant ship had accidentally landed on the planet and, in exchange for some of the minerals and plants, Naruto got a ride off the rock. The village hidden in the leaves was the only village still intact because of the seals he placed all over the village. He had them placed before he had left. Honestly, why was he such a mess when it came to that? Anything else he could brave without a fear. His concentration was broken when he heard the Jedi Masters scream again. He couldn't help but chuckle at the situation. After about 30 minutes later, said Master walked into the room with Ayla and Bly. He sighed as he just knew Samahata was going to cause some kind of trouble. Shock T walked until she was beside Naruto and stared out the window, watching the stars fly by. She had heard the summary of Naruto's tale from Ayla. There were several things she still wished to ask him, but they were personal questions and it wasn't her place. After several seconds she finally turned to him and bowed. Thank you for saving Ayla as well as the younglings and my Padawan. We owe you a great debt. Naruto just waved it off, which surprised the Jedi Master. It was no problem. My spies are working on getting the list of Jedi that are still alive from the Empire. But they only know that it's on one of the deep core worlds, so it will take some time before we know the exact number of survivors. Shock T nodded gratefully. Do you know of any other Jedi who survived? And where are we going exactly? Naruto stiffened at the last question but answered regardless. My spies were able to confront Jedi Master Plo Koon and aid him in escaping. His Padawan was not as fortunate. Master Yoda is also alive. And there are several safe havens you Jedi have that haven't been discovered. So there is a possible number of at least 100 plus total that are confirmed. The other knights and masters, I have no idea. But my sources said that Master Tholm, Master Trias AA, and Quinlan Vos were seen traveling together on Tatooine. My spies are the best in the galaxy. Ayla's heart jumped when she heard both of the men who trained her were alive. Shock T nodded grimly at the low number but could only hope for the best. Ayla held her silence no longer. Naruto, is it possible to come in contact with Master Quinlan and the others? The spotlight turned its attention on her but she was too focused to notice. Naruto nodded his head and Ayla almost cried. Can we go and pick them up? Please, two of them were my masters and Master Trias AA also has helped me in the past. Shock T was not all for the idea of picking up a former Jedi, even one who had resigned. But she also saw the logic of gathering the other masters. She decided to voice her own question. Do your spies know where Master Plo Koon is? Naruto was getting annoyed, he couldn't answer one question because several others kept popping up. First, we are going to my home world, which is beyond the outer rim. Second, yes Ayla, we will pick them up after dropping off the others. And lastly, Master Plo-kun is with my spies in the underground Simeworld of Sereno. Happy that he satisfied their questions, he continued. Now that all of that is out of the way, could someone go check on Samahata? I just know something is going to happen. And we'll be reaching my home world in about 3 weeks. I'll send word to my spies to tell Master Plo-kun to stay hidden and to make contact with the other 3, and, if possible, hide them. 3 weeks later, things were a little hectic on the forward on to Dawn. Constant fights between Bly and Samahata over food and the works. But they had finally arrived at Naruto's home planet. The younglings had gathered along with everyone else to see it. It was beautiful in every sense of the word. There was one huge continent that was surrounded by a vast ocean. Naruto took this time to explain a little of the past of his home. The continent was divided into a number of different countries in its prime. Each country had a hidden village, which housed the shinobis of each country. Countries operated as separate political entities and were presumably all monarchies, ruled by daimyo who stand equally in rank with the hidden village's kage. A kage is the strongest ninja in the village and its leader. Those countries maintained balance between themselves through nothing but power. Treaties were periodically signed, but they were generally not worth much more than the paper they were written on. The children were entranced by his story while Shakti, Ayla, Bly, and Maris listened in rapt attention. The Land of Fire was one of the largest and most powerful countries in the world, and the home of some of the strongest shinobi in the planet's history. Its government leader was the Fire Daimyo. The Land of Fire was the first country to adopt a ninja village, Konohagakure, a custom other countries would soon adopt. The Land of Fire was appropriately oriented towards the element of fire, typically having very bright and warm weather. While not the physically largest country, it has the largest hidden village. Konohagakure, or the village hidden in the leaves, was the hidden village of the Land of Fire. As one of the 5 great shinobi countries, Konohagakure had a kage as its leader known as the Hokage. There have been 5 official Hokage, the last one being Tsunade Senju, a woman feared because of her monstrous strength and widely known for her medical skills. On a mountain overlooking the village from the north exists the Hokage Monument. This has all of the past Kage's faces looking over the village. Although Konoha, which was known as the most powerful village, possessing an elite shinobi army corps, much like the country in which it resides, had been relatively peaceful since the end of the Third Shinobi World War, it remained one of the most powerful villages in existence, and had great military power and influence, though this waned in the final years. It is also the village from which I hail. This was new to everyone except Ayla and Bly, who had overheard them speaking. There were 4 other great nations and hidden villages. Sunagakure was the village hidden in the sand. They specialized in wind techniques and puppetry. They were allied to Konoha after the First Shinobi World War. I was friends with the Godame Kazekage, or the 5th Wind Shadow. He was a good man. Kirigakure, the village hidden in the mist, were mainly focused towards water techniques. They were known for their superior swordsmanship and their bloodlust in battle, though over the years it waned, it was still greater than any other nations. Kumogakure, the village hidden in the clouds, used mostly lightning-based jutsu and were only second to the mist when it came to swordsmanship. Iwagakure, the village hidden in the rock, specialized in earth techniques. Iwagakure was well known for the rock-hard attitude of its shinobi. As soon as the Tsuchikage gave an order, the Iwa Nin did so without hesitating, even if it meant death. There were also several smaller villages that participated in wars and other things. The younglings were fascinated by the abilities Naruto's people could do. The Jedi and clone were shocked by the very militarized world. They started their descent and Naruto decided to wrap things up. Over the course of its years, the nations waged war after war. Children from the age of 6 were trained and sent out to fight for their village at 12. The ranks went from Genin, being the lowest, to Chunin, then Jonin, which means high or elite shinobi. The best of the best were offered the chance to join ANBU, which operated behind the curtains during peacetime. Then Kage, which meant you were in charge of the village. From internal problems to war, they had to deal with it. There have been several small wars and invasions in between the Great Wars. But as time progressed, the wars seemed to slowly decimate the populace. A grand total of 4 Shinbai world wars occurred. I only fought in the last one and several smaller conflicts. The children were trying to wrap the idea around their heads but were having a difficult time. Shock T looked on with pity, as did Maris. Bly couldn't seem to understand why they didn't stop fighting and ended up killing themselves off. Ayla was more concerned about Naruto. He seemed to be devoid of emotion as he spoke. They had gotten to know each other better over the past 3 weeks and she had developed a small crush on him. Though she didn't know it, Naruto felt the same. They spent many nights talking about their lives and their likes as well as dislikes. She learned Naruto was extremely loyal to those few precious to him. Shock T had noticed the two getting closer. And while she disapproved of the violation of the Jedi Code, she also felt the tiniest bit happy for Ayla. Something was cresting over the planet that caught her and everyone else's attention. What is that? Shock T had noticed the two getting closer. And while she disapproved of the violation of the Jedi Code, she also felt the tiniest bit happy for Ayla. Something was cresting over the planet that caught her and everyone else's attention. What is that? An enormous ship crested over the top of the planet. It was nearly as wide as the planet itself. The younglings all were glued to the window, watching the monstrous craft orbit the world. It was shaped like a giant rectangular box. It wasn't the prettiest ship, okay, it was downright ugly. With a capital U. And big and ugly don't go well together. But they saw hundreds of box-shaped turrets lining the whole damn thing. Naruto smirked beneath his mask and spoke with a hint of pride. When you have as much time and money as I do, you tend to get bored really quickly with nothing exploding. That is my pride and joy, the Reach. The ship that can touch the heavens and more. It has so many damn weapons on it, I could storm Coruscant and have a 50-50 chance at winning. Bly looked at him as if he was crazy, and maybe he was a little bit. Shock T, Maris, and Ayla had similar feelings. Bly voiced his skepticism because he had seen firsthand what the Empire's war machine could do. Oh, I doubt that. You'd have to make your way through at least 50 ships varying in class. Not to mention the reinforcements that would be called the moment you arrived. Naruto's smirk only grew, and when Ayla saw the glint in his right eye she almost groaned at his paranoia. The children, thankfully, were still gazing at the massive ship. Well, that is the only variable in the strategy. I have no idea how many ships they would call. If it were another 100 or so, then there is a good chance I would fail. Their gazes were filled with a tiny bit of concern for his sanity. His grin threatened to split his face. They could see it through his mask and it unnerved them. I can see your doubt as clear as the sun. That ship has no class and I made sure there were no others like it. It took 10 years to construct and is outfitted with 30 plasma-powered cannons on each side that could tear through those Empire ships like they were made of paper. Those turrets are able to tear through their fighters easily. Its hangar can hold up to 200 fighters and 100 heavy troop transports. The transports can carry close to 300 troops, so it is, in every sense of the words, a one-ship invasion. Shock T was speechless at the description. Ayla's jaw was on the ground, and Bly was going to overload any second. How was something like that made without the Republic or the Jedi knowing about it? Shock T asked, still in a stupor. Oh, I know some people, and let's just leave it at that. Naruto said as he waved off the question. Naruto chuckled at their expressions. He got up from his chair, as they deck-ended into one of the village's training grounds, and used a finger to shut Ayla's mouth. She flushed up a bit because of the action and his next words didn't help. Careful, you might catch flies if you leave that open. It was hard to tell if she was blushing from anger or embarrassment. She tried to stammer off a reply but he was already out of the room. Bly was snickering while Shock T smiled ever so slightly and Maris offered a sympathetic smile. Training ground, inside Konoha. As they landed they all saw the giant walls of the village. The towering gates of Konohagakure no Sato could be seen quite clearly from the opening forest path towards the large, grand, wooden gates that presented themselves towards any who took the traditional pathway towards Konoha. Far higher than any building in the village, from the ground, it would be nigh impossible to see the village without the gates being open. Incredibly thick and exceptionally strong, possibly created by the powerful wood release that seemed to have been used to construct most of the entire village, this wall serves as a perfect defense against most elemental natures. The village itself was backed against a mountain overlooking Konohagakure and by the northern exits is the monument to the past Hokages of Konohagakure. There were 5 faces in total. The city was colored vibrantly and held a very naturalistic feel to things. As the group of 3 Jedi, a clone, and 22 younglings walked through the village they were surprised by its simplicity. No excess of technology. No pollution or crime. Well, there wouldn't be any due to the strong lack of people. It seemed like it was too good to be true. That was the moment when a giant ox-octopus hybrid with 8 tails slammed into the ground outside the village. The Jedi ignited their lightsabers and were about to defend the younglings when they saw something none of them ever thought they would see. Naruto was giving a fist bump to the creature. What freaked them out was when the creature started to speak. Naruto, it has been many years since you have returned. Can I assume that this isn't a social visit? Naruto chuckled and withdrew his fist. You'd be right in that assumption, Gyuki. 1. I have come to offer sanctum to those in need who have survived a merciless purge. Can you alert the others of their presence? I'd rather not have an incident, especially with Shikaku. The 8 tails nodded his agreement and looked at the others. He smiled before speaking to them. Hello, I welcome you all to our world. Though I would avoid leaving the village. Shikaku is known for his insane nature and with some new visitors, well, he does tend to go overboard. Shock T was still in shock and the only thing she could do was nod her head with a slightly open mouth. Much like everyone else. Bly started walk off muttering about crazy-ass monsters and a crazy-ass ancient old man. He started to look into some of the shops nearby. Naruto walked back to them as the Hachibi went off to alert the other tailed beasts. Okay, Master T, would you mind getting the children settled in? Any house or apartment would do. They're all suitable. Oh, and don't go near the forest of death. There are things in there that would give you nightmares. If you survive, that is. Ayla, come on, we have to go. Ayla was confused about what he was talking about. Wait, why? Naruto adopted an eye smile and spoke in a slightly teasing tone. He continued his way towards the forward onto Dawn. Oh, so you don't want to go reunite with your former masters? Okay then, that saves me the trip. Ayla quickly made her way to catch up to Naruto, who was already halfway back to the forward onto Dawn. No, I just forgot is all. We can still go. Naruto smiled beneath his mask at her happiness. She just seemed to radiate with warmth now that they were going to pick them up. Okay, the trip itself is going to be roughly the same distance. So I'd give us a 2.5 weeks journey at most. We'll be picking up Master Plo-kun on the way back and hitting up another safe haven to check for more survivors. But, as promised, we'll head towards Quinlan Vos, Tholm, and Trisaa first. Bly, Master T, I'll leave behind a shadow clone to show you around and the likes. We'll be back soon enough, and hopefully with more guests. Bly and Shock T nodded and were about to leave when Naruto sent back his shadow clone who gave a transmitter to Shock T. What is this for? She asked, assuming that was for them to keep in touch with Naruto and Ayla. The boss's spies managed to get Master Yoda to have a conference with you over a secure channel. He'll call within the week. She nodded gratefully and they walked off to explore the village. Forward onto Dawn, hyperspace. Naruto had set the coordinates for Tatooine in the hyperdrive. He hadn't dealt that much with the Hutts. He had, of course, paid them to construct the Reach. It cost a second fortune for them to be able to part with the blueprints for the ship. But hey, he had money. More than he knew what to do with. Ayla was checking on the equipment and he had time to relax and mull over the recent events that had taken place in his long life. It was going to be slightly awkward with only them around. Things were so much easier with the others around. As much as he hated to admit it. Every time he thought of Ayla he was conflicted. Sure, the bastard Foxwith had held valuable information from him. But to be honest he had never felt this way before. Yes, he had flings and one-night stands. Hey, no guy can go that long without some form of lovin'. Not that they ever meant anything. For now he just had to get things sorted. Why were women so troublesome? He chuckled. Now he was sounding like Shikamaru when he was married to Temari. Ayla called to him from the cargo hold. Hey Naruto, do you care to make a bet? This piqued his interest. He had his impeccable streak of luck, so he wanted to know what she was betting for. Depends, what are we betting for? She walked back in the room with a huge smirk on her face. A spare. If I win, you take and keep your mask off from here on out. And if I win? He asked with a raised eyebrow. Ayla's smirk threatened split her face. Then I'll let you take me out to dinner. She had decided to see if he had similar feelings for her as she did for him. Ayla got kind of nervous when he got up and walked to the door. He stopped right in front of the door and turned to face her. She saw an evil glint in his eye. You coming? I'll make this fair and I won't use my Sharingan. Naruto stood across from Ayla a few feet from her. He opted to pull out his copy of Ika and read as he waited for her to warm up. Now, you may be wondering why Naruto was not limbering up for the coming match. The answer to that is actually very simple. He didn't need to. Naruto constantly took missions and participated in wars over his prolonged existence. The constant fighting always kept his skills in peak form and condition. He was never unprepared for a fight and was never caught off guard. So he could wait and casually read his second favorite book. Alright, whenever you're ready. Ayla said as she fell into a stance while igniting her own lightsaber. Naruto's book disappeared in a poof of smoke and a pair of jagged-edged katana took the book's place. As he moved into his own kenjutsu stance, lightning danced in between the twin blades. But before she could ask what they were, Naruto sprung into action. Naruto did a flying helicopter kick, to which Ayla promptly rolled out of the way, landing with ease as he then tossed the katana into the air, performing several backflips before catching them and landing, continuing the motion into a rapid series of hand-over-shoulder spins, the twin blades whirring and humming through the air in a wonderfully displayed show of swordsmanship. Take it up a notch? Naruto asked, and she nodded, using the force to try and shove the blonde back. Leaping high into the air, he spun around before firing back lightning strikes, using lightning chakra to try and knock her blades out of her hands. Frowning, Ayla barely shrugged off the attack and thrust both fists up, catching Naruto with a huge force thrust and catapulting him towards the ceiling. To Ayla's shock, he landed on the ceiling. And stuck there. Naruto smirked as he held his blades in a loose fashion. These swords are known as the Kiba blades. The user of the blades is able to channel their chakra into them and create lightning-based attacks. So good luck. Ayla nodded, then developed a twitch above her eye. Really, that's interesting. So, why the hell are you standing on the ceiling? She shouted at the question with a frustrated look on her face. Things just couldn't ever be easy for her, could they? Naruto just chuckled before dropping to the floor in a graceful landing. When I channel chakra to my feet, I can use it to stick to walls, ceilings, hell, I can even walk on water. But that's for another time. Let's continue, shall we? Ayla performed the same force leap, landing in front of Naruto, and continued their duel, sparks and jolts of lightning flying as their blades clashed viciously. Performing a backflip, Naruto flung his swords at Ayla, using them as a distraction to get in closer. While her eyes and concentration were focused on the sharp, jagged, sparky blades, Naruto used his speed attained from years of practice and battle to position himself to catch them. When Ayla deflected the electric swords of death, it was all over. Naruto grabbed one of them while the other went into the wall up to the hilt. Ayla turned to face him again, only to feel his blade against her throat. Naruto smirked at the crestfallen look her face had adopted. As he moved one of the Kiba blades away from her and went to collect the other, his free hand pulled down his mask. Ayla was confused by the action. "But I lost." "You don't have to keep your mask off." He only gave her a knowing smile before sealing away his swords and walked over to her. "You're right, I don't have to do anything. But I want to do this. Besides, it's weird to wear a mask on a date. How's a small dinner at restaurant on Sereno before we pick up Master Plo-kun?" Ayla smiled a little brighter at the considerate things Naruto said and did. "That'd be nice. I'd like to." Naruto's smile widened ever so slightly and he left to check on the controls among other things. When he left the room, Ayla let out a content sigh and decided to do some training. While the end of the fight was rather rewarding, she came to the realization that she needed to get stronger if she wanted to live. The reverence. There were only a handful of people who knew the truth, that he had orchestrated so much in order to gain his dream, a dream which all Sith had had before him. The dream of conquering the galaxy and bringing it under the rule of the Sith. He had just taken a more roundabout approach than his predecessors, an approach which had been in planning for almost a millennium. He already had the majority of the Senate under his thumb, either through bribes, blackmailing, or even eliminating those he had no control over and replacing them with susceptible puppets that he could easily control. As Darth Sidious, he had rallied the equally corrupt separatists. He removed potential enemies who could hinder his plan, replacing the heads of the major corporations who backed the Confederacy with their private armies with weak-minded and easily manipulated puppets. The Trade Federation, the Techno Union, the banking clans, unhappy planetary governments, independence movements, far-right radicals, all were chess pieces in his game. And when their usefulness had run its course, he made sure they were eliminated swiftly and without evidence. When he knew that he could create his Order's millennia-long dream of a galactic empire, he manipulated the Jedi into acting against him, using him and his weaknesses as the catalyst to begin it all. When the Jedi were eliminated and vilified as traitors, he turned his sights on the separatists, removing them. The Jedi fools never knew what hit them. The majority weren't even aware of the High Council's move against Sidious. By the time they knew what had happened, the clones were already there, killing indiscriminately. Across the galaxy, clones gunned down their Jedi commanders and generals. Years of fighting alongside them, eating, laughing and sparring with them had done nothing more than made the clones want to end their lives as quickly and with as little pain as possible. Most probably never saw it coming. They were on one of the newly commissioned Imperial-class star destroyers. It was half a kilometer longer than its Venator-class counterpart and carried almost 3 times the firepower. In time, Imperial-class star destroyers like the one they were on now would completely overtake their Venator-class cousins as the mainstay of the newly reformed Imperial Star Fleet. The Reverence was also Lord Vader's flagship. Almost all of her crew was hand-picked by him, from the actual crew to the Marines and Stormtroopers, and they all knew the price of failure. Of all the men and women serving on board, whether enlisted personnel or commissioned officers, there were only a handful that Vader had not chosen personally. Vader was broken out of his thoughts when his new clone commander walked into the room with a report. He still felt angry when he heard his old friend Rex was reported missing when Order 66 went out. Just one of the many things he's been angry about lately. "Speak," he ordered in his raspy voice. Well sir. There seems to be a little problem. He managed to force out in the man's intimidating presence. And what may that be? Vader spoke coldly, he was growing tired of this fool's stupidity. It was times like this that he wished Rex was still with them. WLS sir, we managed to clean up the footage of Ashoka Tano's attempted execution. Why you may want to see this sir. Vader said nothing as the other clones set up the monitor. He wondered what it was that was so important that they decided to waste his time with it. As the image came into focus and the footage started to play, he wondered if he would have to hunt down his old Padawan because she was the cause of Rex's untimely demise. And then the video started to play. If one could see his face, they who see Vader's jaw dropping. Now some may be wondering why he would be doing something so un-Sith-like. Well, it was because Rex was helping his old Padawan escape death as he killed several clones in doing so. This was going to ruin his whole day. That's it for today guys, hope you all enjoyed this video.